The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Mr. Speaker, honorable representatives, and all gathered today in these chambers, it is a privilege to stand before you. During the 72-73 school year, I served here as a high school intern, and from Humboldt High School on this city's west side, I came here and fell in love with the American political system. I couldn't wait for the day when I could post my name for election and sit in your seat. Well, here I am. Alas, following graduation with no money for college, I went off to serve in the United States Navy and did so proudly and with honor. And today, my dream of serving here in the House has come true. Thank you to the Honorable Lori Halverson from Egan for the invitation to be with you today. I met Lori when she was my running coach, and she was tireless in her efforts to encourage me. Keep going, keep trying, you can do it. I was always last, but I always finished, and I trust she brings to this House that same spirit of encouragement and stick-to-itiveness. Let's pray. We gather today on this sacred ground, for all of creation is sacred and holy. We gather this day within these sacred walls, for it is the effort, sweat, and the eye for beauty that has gathered these elements of creation, stone and wood, granite and marble, earth and water, to create these hallowed halls, where together we come to work out how we will live together in the great state of Minnesota. God of us all, you trust to us in our full humanity the will and the way to be your servant leaders. And so in this spirit of service, we ask your blessing upon the work of this House and all who gather in it. May we be the kind of people you call us to be, kind and caring, generous and loving, willing to serve and to be served. Shalom, salam, peace be with you. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Cindy Yanchuri, Advent United Methodist Church, Egan, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th session, 2013, 27th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Monday, March 18th, 2013.
If there's no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. There's a copy of this order of business on each member's desk. If there is no objection, the comparison reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the comparison reports are adopted.
Thank you.
Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection, those committee reports will be adopted. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I object to the committee report on House File 950 from the Committee of Government Operations. 950, and I would like a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
And we'll get to that when we get through the rest. Any other objections? Hearing none, all the reports except for House File 950 will be adopted. Representative Pepin requests a roll call on the adoption of House File, the committee report for House File 950. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I reject this committee report for a number of reasons. This is the bill that requires small business owners to unionize. The reason I object to this is because the bill was not fully vetted in committee. The opponents of the bill were repeatedly cut off from testifying, while the proponents were not cut off or told to finish up. In addition, members were repeatedly cut off from their line of questioning. In fact, I'm in my 9th session, and I don't recall a time where I've ever been actually cut off from questioning in a committee hearing. And that happened to me personally at least 2 or 3 times, as well as at least 2 other members. I understand that there was a rookie member at the helm yesterday, but that doesn't take away from the fact that debate was stifled on this very controversial and important issue. And in my view, that behavior was inexcusable. Government Operations further could have taken the bill up, as was suggested by myself and other members, could have been taken up in the evening. We are not meeting in GovOps this evening. We are not meeting in GovOps tomorrow evening. It was suggested that we could meet during one of those times. There was plenty of time to meet the committee deadline, but yet when we asked to have more time, we asked to recess, to reconsider. It was not even debated. The fact of the matter is this bill is highly controversial. It's requiring small business owners to unionize, which is unprecedented. It also has many data privacy concerns, and civil law is not the next committee that it's been referred to. It needs to go there. And frankly, I had many, many more questions for this bill, as did several other members of the committees. It has not been fully vetted. It needs to go back. So, members, I would ask that we send this bill back to Government Operations Committee.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was not in the chair for that meeting because it was my bill that was being heard. But the chair of the committee at the time gave more time to the opponents of the bill than the proponents of the bill. We went an hour and 45 minutes, actually almost like an hour and 50 minutes on the bill. Discussion back and forth. It's been vetted in many other committees. The portion that is being talked about with the data privacy pieces was vetted in the Civil Law Committee. And so, Mr. Chair, this bill should move forward. It had plenty of hearing time.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I urge you to send House File 950 back to the Committee on Government Operations. This hearing that happened yesterday in Government Operations, this was the first time that this bill had received a full hearing since it was engrossed, since these 2 bills were merged together, the unionization of PCA workers and small business owners in the form of child care, daycare providers. These are 2 very controversial bills that are simple to explain in summary, yet very complex when you look at the inner workings of these bills. We heard time and time again, and I take you at your word, that the rules process we went through, that the rules that we adopted in this body, the reason we were doing that is to provide more time for work to be done in committee, for more public testimony, for more thoughtfulness to be done, so that we would not have to do the work of committee on the House floor. And I think that's a good goal. I don't know that we necessarily needed those rules, but nonetheless that happened. I'm in my 5th session now, and I have never, before yesterday, been cut off or told that I could not ask a question to the bill, that I could not make a comment on a bill, that I could not represent my constituents on a bill. I was on the list. The member chairing the committee said that I was on the list, yet didn't come back to me. Said we needed to take a vote. And while an hour and 45 minutes may be a substantial amount of time for one bill, this was two bills merged into one. This deserved more time. And we had more time. We had more time on this bill. We came back, we recessed immediately after the vote on party lines. We recessed. We came back at 6 o'clock that evening, heard about a dozen bills. And in the committee report today, the report of standing committees and divisions, we have House File 138, 262, House File 646, House File 778, House File 857, House File 894, House File 1050, all of which were heard after the recess, all of which are here on the House floor, ready to be moved to another committee. And I will say, Chair Nelson, that we had a very thorough and exhaustive discussion on those bills after recess. We clearly vetted those bills. There's no objections to those bills today. Why in the world did we need to jam that bill through committee? Why did we need to cut senior members off from asking questions, from representing their constituents? That certainly was not our best. That certainly is not the best that this institution can offer the state of Minnesota, can offer the public. Members, I ask that you send this back, that we make this right, that we allow the Government Operations Committee to fully vet these two bills. We certainly can do that. In fact, we even had more time last night. We adjourned about 10 o'clock last night, which would have provided about 2 hours under our House rules that we could have further discussed this bill. This was not an attempt to delay or an attempt to not say this bill can't move through your process, but for members not to be able to ask a single question on the bill as amended or to make comments is not the best that this institution has to offer, and I ask that you reject this committee report.
Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, actually, you don't have to be in a committee to ask a question. If you don't understand a bill, you are free to ask anybody a question about what is in that bill anytime you want. The fact of the matter is, taking an hour and 45 minutes for one bill during the second deadline week is more than generous, and Representative Nelson has been extremely generous in the scope of questions that he's allowed members to talk about and discuss in the Government Operations Committee. Those of you who have been living through it can testify to this. We are not providing really very many guidelines at all about the government operations aspects of the bill for this bill that you're talking about. An hour and 45 minutes is more than generous. 2 years ago, there was a chair of the Civil Law Committee who gave less time. He gave 90 minutes to a constitutional amendment. Representative Westrom, when he chaired the Civil Law Committee, gave 90 minutes to a constitutional amendment on same-sex marriage. Got it done in time, got it out to the floor, did what he wanted to do. 90 minutes was enough time for a constitutional amendment. It's not enough time to talk about a government operations bill. Members, it's silly. If you don't understand it when they walk in the room, you have time. Every question that was asked by the committee members were asked by the minority. There was ample time for members of the public to be involved in the discussion, but it went on and on and on, and most of the questions really had nothing to do with the government operations aspects of the bill. There were labor questions and child care questions and health care questions and all kinds of things that had nothing to do with that committee. And to complain today that you didn't have enough time because we could have gone to midnight last night is, I think, really stretching it. I mean, we could, in theory, meet 24, well, we can't. We could come in at 7 a.m. and meet till midnight, and as long as you want to ask questions, you can, but there's no way to run the body. There was ample time. This is silly. You're just making a point about a bill that you don't like. The time for debating and giving the reasons for bills you don't like is actually when they're before us, not on a committee report.
Representative Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is only my fourth week, and I can't tell you how disappointing it is that we didn't get more time to voice the concerns that we've had from the emails that we received from the people who are concerned about their small business, who own these businesses, and now they're going to have to be under union care. It's very disappointing. I really believe we should have had more time to discuss the emails that we received, the concerns we received, and as somebody who is one of the freshest of the freshmen, It was just very sad.
Representative Franzen.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Members, House File 950 is the largest union power grab in the history of Minnesota. In the history of
Parliamentary
Minnesota.
inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Winkler, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, is the substance of the bill before the body right now? Because I don't believe Representative Franzen's on the committee.
Mr.
No,
Speaker,
it's
point
not.
of parliamentary inquiry.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry. Didn't the representative just say we can discuss this bill at any time he wants? Didn't he say that to the body? And now the gentleman is changing his mind? Isn't that what he said? It's exactly what you said. You said we can discuss this.
Representative Garofalo, please proceed through the chair.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from Golden Valley said that. He said we could have this debate at any time, and now the gentleman's changed his mind.
Representative Garofalo, that's not a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Oh, okay. Well,
Representative Franzen.
Just a point of ignorance, I guess, then. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Once again, as I was stating, the largest power union grab in the history of Minnesota is House File 950. This here is a stack of emails I received yesterday alone on this issue. Yesterday alone. Representative Dorholt, would you yield to a question?
Representative Dorholt will yield.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Representative Dorholt, yesterday I made some phone calls into your district and talked to child care providers. I've received some emails from them as well. Do you know where they stand on this issue?
Representative Franzen, that actually is an out-of-order inquiry. We're on the motion to adopt the committee report,
Thanks.
not on the substance of the bill. So if you have something to say about
Yep,
the committee
I do.
process
Thank you.
last night,
Yep.
you're certainly welcome to do that.
Mr. Speaker, members, yesterday I happened to pop in on the committee just to kind of see what was going on. I've got providers all over the state of Minnesota very concerned about this bill making it to the House floor and being passed. They feel that their voice is still not being heard. Providers all over the state of Minnesota are against House File 950, and they are very concerned that they've elected members into this body that are not paying attention to their voice, but instead paying attention to very partisan organizations. I've done childcare. I understand.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Winkler, state your point of order.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Franzen is out of order. She's trying to discuss the substance of the bill rather than sticking to the committee process.
Mr. Speaker,
Point
I am
of
sticking to the
parliamentary
process,
inquiry.
actually. Just telling a little background story.
Is there any advice on the point of order?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Driscowski.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask if the member would cite the particular rule in this House that is in violation.
Representative Winkler. Okay. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Advice. Under Rule 6.30, the House must adopt or reject a committee report on a bill or resolution without amendment. And it has been both custom and usage and reflected in Mason's that we are not to enter debate on the subject matter of a bill, but instead our only action when a committee report is before us is to adopt or reject the report itself. It is, I imagine, we can ask questions about the report, but the subject matter of the bill underneath it is not before the body and therefore not a matter for debate before the House. And I would rule the point of order well taken. Ask you to rule. I would ask you to rule.
Mr. Speaker.
So members, I am at this point going to defer on this ruling. But I would ask members to actually stick to the process by which this bill is moving from one committee to another committee and not engage in a debate over the substance of the bill, because that I do not believe that is appropriate at this time. So Representative Franzen.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Skowski.
I raised to a point of information from you, Mr. Speaker, and that is, according to our rules, Mr. Speaker, House Rule 6.30, is there anywhere in that House rule that precludes Representative Franzen from the discussion that she's been engaged in? I don't see any there, Mr. Speaker, and I understand that that is the rule that was cited.
Representative Skowski, I don't think Representative Winkler actually did cite a rule in his point of order. Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, yes, so yesterday I'm in Government Operations Committee watching the process happen. Amendments being shot down on party line levels. I actually did witness Representative Sanders getting shot down and ignored by the chair of that committee when he asked for more time. Members, right there, that's an issue. When a senior member poses concern, and we're in the minority level, and amendments are going down a party line without any direction, I don't even think the freshman members on the other side of the aisle actually know what you voted on yesterday. You probably may want to go look and see that, listen to the podcast. But this bill must be back to the Health and Human Service Finance Committee. We have providers there that are...
Representative Franzen, the bill was in the Government Operations Committee.
Yes, but I'd like it re-referred to...
We're not on that right now. We're on the adoption of the report. There can be a motion later if you want to re-refer it, but we're on the adoption of the report.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. As you can tell, this is a very contentious issue. It shouldn't have to be, though. It should not have to be. Representative Pepin, thank you for bringing forward those amendments that you brought yesterday. It was really sad, though, that there will not be enough time before this bill makes it to the House floor. So I guess we will just have to continue talking to our providers around the state of Minnesota, telling them that we are trying to do everything we can to make sure that this process goes through the proper channels. Members on the other side of the aisle, I ask that you vote with the minority party and refer this to the other committee.
Representative Holberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. Will the author yield?
The author will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, House File 950, my understanding is a combination of the base bill and then House File 844, the bill that would allow for a process for unionization of personal care attendants, and I'm wondering if if I'm correct.
Representative Nelson.
Mr. Speaker, yes, you're correct. And House File 844 was heard in civil law.
Representative Holberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And my comments may be a little premature here, but the fact is that the base bill 950 never went to civil law, and the data provisions contained in 950 are very similar to those in 844. But 950 never went to the Civil Law Committee, so we could have a discussion on the data provisions around the child care workers, and in particular, you are providing disclosure of unlicensed child care workers in a way that's never been allowed before, and whether or not that's a factor in deciding whether or not to adopt the committee report. Maybe I'll have to stand again later on a re-referral motion, but this bill should go to the Civil Law Committee in order that the Civil Law Committee have the discussion on the data provisions surrounding the child care worker process.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is not the first time that this bill has been asked to be sent back to committee. The child care bill and the PCA bill were traveling as separate bills, and they were taking on their own merit a rather large amount of time to be vetted through committees. Last Thursday, they were, for lack of a better term, married together by amendment in the labor, workforce, and regulated industries. And because the members of the committee had so many questions at that point, Chair Johnson was very accommodative to our requests, and we ended up debating that bill for almost 2.5 to 3 hours when we had a very tight schedule as well. And I realized that yesterday on our agenda in government operations, there were 2 bills that were on there. 950, which is the 2 bills merged together, and we also had an elections bill, which traditionally elections bills are rather controversial just by their very nature. But that was the agenda for yesterday. What's probably the most disturbing about this is that when we began the committee, none of the members had amendments for 950. And what had happened was I noticed, and I turned to Representative Sanders and others on our side and asked if they had it, just thinking that I might be the only one that didn't have copies of the amendments. And they confirmed that they didn't, and I actually had to interrupt proceedings, which we were in the process of a vote at that point, to do an author's amendment. And that author's amendment went on where we never had a chance to have it in our physical presence at the time that it was going through committee. So what had happened was we kind of got ourselves back on board. We were looking at whether we had the amendments. And then the pages came through and one at a time went around to every member and dropped off an individual amendment, interrupting the flow and the concentration of members as people were testifying. Well, then we felt we had this time crunch that we found ourselves under, and I questioned whether it was maybe a self-imposed time crunch. But what we did was we had discussion on the amendments, and it was announced that we needed to vote at a certain time. And so we didn't have the amendment that was an author's amendment. We didn't get a chance to debate that because we didn't have it in front of us, nor did we get a chance to debate the amended bill because debate was cut off after the amendments. And as you've heard from other members, no conversation, no debate, no questions were allowed on the bill by itself. And just a couple of the things that were in the author's amendment that I'd just like to visit about, and I don't know where the committee stands on this because we never had a chance to really talk about it. One of the areas deals with the structure of the committee that's going to be providing some oversight and providing direction on this. Another has to do with the way that we're going to be organizing the data.
Madam Speaker.
Representative Murphy.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
What action is before the body right now, Madam Speaker?
The adoption of the committee report.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Is House File 950 before the body at this moment, Madam Speaker?
Representative Murphy, it is not.
And point of parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If House File 950 is not before the body at this time, can we debate, vote, or amend the bill, Madam Speaker?
We cannot, Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Then I would ask that no debate be allowed on the bill.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, I was interrupted. I do believe I still have the floor, so I'd like to maybe just, I will leave that line of questioning. I'll just ask Majority Leader Murphy if she would yield to a question from a procedure
Madam Speaker,
standpoint.
point of parliamentary inquiry.
The Minority Leader, Representative
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you made a ruling there or answered a point of parliamentary inquiry from the Majority Leader, can you cite the rule that you're using to make that assessment?
Representative Doubt, she did not raise a point of order. She asked a parliamentary inquiry about what order of business we are on, and the orders of business are available on the internet, and that is the stage that we're at in this. The mic is on, but I will speak louder. Representative Doubt, she made a parliamentary inquiry. She did not raise a point of order, so I did not rule on any point of order. I indicated the order of business that the House is on, which is adoption of committee reports.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Representative O'Driscoll, to the adoption of the committee report on House File 950.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the Majority Leader yield to a question, please?
Representative O'Driscoll, she will yield. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Majority Leader, when we adopted our rules, we said the work was going to be done in committees. I'm just wondering if you feel that it's important that committee members have copies of the amendments at the time that we begin the debate and before those are moved, and to amend the bill, if that's an important part of the procedure and process that we think the committee should be working with.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and Representative O'Driscoll. Of course I do. And I have reviewed the work of the committee. I've talked with a number of members of the committee to understand both the bill, its process through the legislature, and its hearing in government operations. It was its fourth hearing, as I understand it. It's had more than 12 hours of hearing thus far, and it has further committee stops, which is why I think it's important for us to adopt the committee report today. I understand that the committee went over 15 minutes yesterday, so they met for an hour and 45 minutes on the topic, and I also understand that the committee entertained a motion to recess, a motion to lay the bill on the table, and a motion to adjourn the committee, all offered by, I believe, minority members of the committee, which I think undercuts the idea that the committee or the minority members were very interested in continuing to debate the bill. A motion to adjourn, of course, would end debate. A motion to lay on the table would end that debate. A motion to recess would end that debate. I understand that all the amendments were heard. I understand all the testifiers were able to testify. I also understand that the opponents of the bill had more time to testify than the proponents of the bill. So I do think it's important that the committee does its work. I think the committee did its work. I'd like to thank Representative Nelson, the author of the bill, Representative Freiberg for stepping up as the chair. I understand you did a great job. And I think we should adopt the committee report today and move this piece of legislation forward so it can be heard in Health and Human Services, where I understand Mary Franson has concerns. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Representative O'Driscoll.
I will make one more final point just for members to consider. The committee didn't have the amendments. The author's amendment was moved. There was no debate on the bill, so there was no debate on the author's amendment. And if you're interested in taking a look at it, it does substantially affect the bill, and unfortunately government operations, which had full jurisdiction, may not have this. So the opportunity to talk about this and to vet it out. It's my hope, members, that you will keep in mind the rules and leave this in government operations for them to continue the work that was started there. Thank you.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, members, in the Government Operations Committee yesterday, we entertained a bill that was brought forward just 4 months after the unions in Minnesota spent $11 million in order to influence the election.
Representative Drazkowski, a point of order has been raised. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, Mason, Section 101, debate is limited to the question before the House. Section 1, debate must be confined to the question before the body.
Representative Drazkowski, you must confine your debate to the adoption of the committee report. We can bring you a copy of the committee report, and you can indicate which portion you have a problem with, but the issue before the House is the adoption or rejection of the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the member bringing that point of order out, or that citation in Mason's, but the reality is, Madam Speaker, I'm just introducing the bill to the members of the House that aren't familiar with the bill that we were entertaining yesterday in the Government Operations Committee, and that is a bill that affects over 10,000 private Minnesota businesses, private daycare businesses.
Representative Drazkowski.
It's House File 950.
Representative Drazkowski, you are out of order. You are not on the order of business that's before the House.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Representative Doubt, in a minute. Representative Drazkowski, the order of business before the House is the adoption of the committee report. Your debate right now is to the substance of the bill. If you have an issue with the committee report, please address that to the body. Representative Doubt, do you have a point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I draw your attention. I'm rising to a point of order. There's been a lot of discussion here calling members of this body out of order for speaking on the content of the bill. This bill was actually amended in committee, and I'm rising to a point of order under Section 616 of Mason's, under paragraph 1, that says a committee can only propose amendments to the bill referred to it and cannot actually amend or modify them. The sole power of the committee is to make recommendations to the body. and no recommendation becomes effective until adopted by the body. The action that we're taking right now, Madam Speaker, is to actually adopt the committee report, which has the same effect of adopting these amendments that were proposed in committee. And by adopting these amendments here on the House floor, the content of this bill is before this body, and its content is certainly in order to be discussed here on this floor. And I ask that you make a ruling on the point of order that I've brought forward.
Representative Doubt, the Masons is not the highest authority that governs the House floor. The first authority that governs the House floor is the Minnesota Constitution. The second authority is the Minnesota rules. And then in cases of ambiguity, we go to Masons. The custom and usage of the House is more significant than Masons, and it is the custom and usage of the House and Rule 6.30 that clearly addresses this topic, that the substance of the bill is not before the House. When the bill is finally reported to the House, then the substance of the bill and its amendments are before the House. So I find the point of order not well taken.
Madam Speaker?
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker.
Representative Doubt.
You cited Rule 6.30. Can you tell me in Rule 6.30 specifically where it says that the content of this bill is not before the body at this time? Because
No.
I do not read that language in the House rules.
Representative Doubt, I said Rule 6.30 and the custom and usage of the House.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, I appeal the ruling of the chair and I request a roll call vote.
Representative Doubt moves to appeal the ruling of the Speaker and asks for a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Advice to the body.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not used to you calling on me, so thank you for that. But members, this is pretty important, and what I said earlier in my point of order is exactly correct. And Rule Section 616 of Masons literally says that by offering an amendment in committee, the committee doesn't actually amend the bill. We know this. They're recommending adoption of the amendment to the House, to the body. And that comes to the House floor in the form of a committee report. And when we discuss that committee report here on the floor, we're actually amending the bill and then re-referring it to the next committee. And that's why the motion says to pass and re-refer. Okay? The rules are very clear, and there is no custom and usage of this body that says that the content of the bill is not under debate for a bill that was amended in committee. We continue to be, I don't know why we're so afraid to have a debate about the content of these bills. I am absolutely right on this, and our rules are clear. We can't just make up precedents. We can't just make up rules. We have rules that govern how this body operates, and I know that already this session we have thrown those out the window on different issues. But this is your opportunity, members, to stand up and say that we're going to honor the rules, the custom and usage, Mason's manual, and we're going to follow the procedures that we have for 150 years in this House. Absolutely, the content of this bill is before this body. It was amended or recommended to be amended in committee, and we're amending it right here on the floor by moving it to the next committee. That absolutely is what we're doing. You can see it in Masons. There's nothing in Rule 6.3 that says that the content of this bill is not before this body. Pay attention, members. This is your opportunity. We've got rules that govern this body, and we need to follow those rules to ensure that we're protecting the rights of the constituents that we represent. And we have members who wanted to talk about this bill. We have members who had concerns about this bill in committee. And we had a chair that literally said to one of those members, "You're on the list next, but Representative Pepin is the next one to speak," implying that we're coming back to you. That member was Representative Sanders. We never went back to that member. He never got an opportunity to express his concerns in committee, to ask the questions that he wanted to find out about this bill and what these amendments meant. And now today, you're telling me that we can't talk about the content of these amendments when we are literally adopting these amendments on the House floor. Okay? That's a problem, members. That's a problem. We need to follow the rules and the way that this body has operated for 150 years. If you're afraid to have a debate about an issue, then let's talk about that. But our constituents back in our districts expect us to come here to St. Paul to debate this stuff. They expect us to have an open and honest debate and a conversation about, is this the right direction for Minnesota? They don't want things rammed through in the dark of night without discussion in committee. They expect us to be here doing the work that they sent us here to do. I actually am ashamed of what's going on here. We don't want to debate. We don't want to talk about the content of a bill. Somehow we must be afraid to talk about the content of a bill. Our constituents ought to be ashamed of what you're doing in this chamber. I'll withdraw the request for a roll call.
Representative Doubt withdraws his request for a roll call. On advice to the body on the speaker's, whether the speaker's ruling should be upheld that the point of order under Mason 616 was not well taken. Representative Kahn.
Madam Speaker and Representative Doubt, I know you have been here a couple of years, but I've been here for 41 years, and so I do know something about the custom and usage of the House. And I have never seen a debate on the content of a bill at the time of adoption of the report. And so I believe the custom of usage, and I do believe we have this list of things that we follow, which I don't totally agree with, but they have been, they are part of our procedures, that custom and usage does take precedence over Masons. So I think the issue is settled.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Advice?
State your advice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd urge you that you rule the doubt motion. I would urge members of the body, let's get this right, to vote against the doubt motion for several reasons. First of all, as already been stated, House rules. Clearly, this is not in order. Representative Kahn, custom and usage. And additionally, I would draw members' attention to two provisions in Masons. Masons 101, number 1, debate must be confined to the question before the body. The question before this body is not the content of the bill. It is about the motion to move it along through the process. And secondly, Masons 82 makes it explicitly clear the motion to commit or refer to committee is debatable on the propriety of the reference, but the main question is not open to debate on this motion. Under our rule, our custom and usage, and Masons, the only debate permissible on this floor on this motion is the propriety of the motion, not the content or substance of the bill in question. Thank you, members.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw my appeal for the ruling to the chair, and I have a point of parliamentary inquiry that I'd like to ask to the chair.
Representative Doubt withdraws his appeal of the ruling of the Speaker. Representative Doubt, state your parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My parliamentary inquiry is, was this bill amended in committee, or was that a recommendation to amend, and the bill is actually being amended now on the House floor and sent to the next committee? And you can take a lifeline on that if you need to.
Representative Doubt, the committee report that we are acting on reports that the committee adopted amendments. And the issue before this body, as it states in Rule 6.30, the House must adopt or reject a committee report on a bill or resolution without amendments. So the order of business before the House right now is the adoption of the committee report. And the committee reported the bill back with the following amendments. And you could get a copy of this if you'd like. Representative Doubt.
Madam Speaker, I believe that Rule 6.3 states that we can't amend the bill here on the floor. And I think that to square this up, Section 616 in Masons is pretty clear. Paragraph 1, a committee can only propose amendments to the bills referred to it and cannot actually amend or modify them. Okay? So our House rules, I'm going to get to my question, don't worry. The House rules say that the body can't amend, apparently is your ruling. The body can't amend. Okay? But Masons, it's silent on whether a committee can, maybe. I'm not sure about that. We'll get to that. But it says in 616 in Masons that a committee clearly can only propose amendments to the bills referred to it and cannot actually amend or modify them. The sole power of the committee is to make recommendations to the body, and no recommendation becomes effective until adopted by the body. So my question for you is, by adopting this committee report, are we actually carrying that out and adopting the amendments that were recommended to this body by the committee? Because that's the way I read this.
Representative Doubt, the thing about Masons that members have to be careful about is that there are contradictory positions in Masons on a wide array of topics. And so Masons is instructive, but what is superior and governs activity on the House floor is the Minnesota Constitution, the Minnesota rules, custom and usage, and then Masons. What you are highlighting is that there is a conflict between 616 of Masons and the custom and usage of the House, as I've explained, as the clerk has explained to me, and as Representative Kahn has explained. And when there's a conflict between something in Masons and the custom and usage of the House, the custom and usage of the Minnesota House takes precedence. Part of the reason for that is if we followed everything in Masons, we would be on both sides of almost every issue. Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My point is this, and the argument that I made previously and I'm going to make again to you is that I don't believe there is a custom and usage that says that the bill is not before the body. And the point in Masons is clear. It's the way this body functions, that we are actually adopting the amendment here on the floor, and that it was recommended by passing the committee report, which is a motion to pass and re-refer. We're passing that recommendation from the committee that it be amended, and we're re-referring it to the next committee where it potentially will have more amendments. So I don't believe there is a precedence in this body that's any different, and I'm asking you, can you state a precedence that shows that it's different? Because you're citing precedence as an excuse that we shouldn't follow Masons. But I don't believe they're in conflict. I believe that Masons is consistent with the custom and usage of this body, and I'm asking you to state a specific instance or precedence where that's the case.
Representative Doubt, Rule 6.30 codifies to some extent the custom and usage of the Minnesota House. There were other members standing before you stood again.
Madam Speaker?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
When you made your earlier ruling, and again you just mentioned it, you referred to rules because there's apparently a conflict in Masons, which is pretty clear, the point that Representative Doubt was making, so we're going back to rules. But then we still have a problem because, again, it goes back to the fact that nowhere in Rule 6.30 does it say that we can only debate the substance of the bills. We cannot debate the substance of the bills on a committee report. No one has pointed that out. You have not pointed that out. No one here has pointed that out. So it does not say that in committee reports. You have not cited a spot in custom and usage. And so there is nothing that prevents us. And in fact, Masons encourages us, or doesn't encourage us, but doesn't prevent us from discussing the subject matter of the bill on the floor in a committee report.
Representative Pepin, actually I did point that out when Representative Doubt rose to his point of order. I said 6.30 in combination with custom and usage of the House dictates that we don't debate the substance of the committee report.
Madam Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Could you point out the line in Rule 6.30 that says that we cannot debate the substance of the bill, because I cannot see it anywhere, but you keep saying that that's where it can be found, but I cannot read it. So could you read the sentence where it says we cannot debate the substance of the bill in a committee report?
Representative Pepin, that's custom and usage of the House. There's not a sentence in House Rule 6.30 that states that.
Madam Speaker?
State your parliamentary inquiry.
Madam Speaker, you just said it is a combination of custom and usage and Rule 6.30. But yet you came back and now you said it does not exist in 6.30.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Madam Speaker, point of order.
Representative Winkler.
The issue before the body is adoption of a committee report. We are not on advice to the body on a point of order. That point of order was withdrawn. We are not engaged in an ongoing debate about the meaning of the rules without a point of order being before the body. If we have a parliamentary inquiry, that has to be stated as a parliamentary inquiry. Otherwise, an ongoing debate between members about what the rules mean is not before the body.
Members, I have 4 people on the list who were on the list to speak to the adoption of House File 950 prior to the
parliamentary inquiry, Madam
Doubt
Speaker.
Point of order. Representative Doubt.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you. As I look in our reports of standing committees and divisions, and this is what we're acting on, which is the portion of this report that refers to House File 950. And that motion actually reads, and I'm going to quote what the motion says, with recommendation that when so amended, it says that when so amended, the bill pass and be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services Finance. My question is to you, why does it say when so amended that the bill pass and be referred to committee? It seems that the language in the motion that we're actually adopting is consistent with what I've argued, that this bill is actually technically being amended today here on the floor. That we're adopting the recommendations of the committee, amending the bill here, and sending it to the next committee. And the motion says that. So I'm wondering why the motion is inconsistent with your previous answers.
Representative Doubt, I have stated for you and restated for you the custom and usage of the House.
Yes, but I'm wondering specifically now, and my point of parliamentary inquiry is maybe the motion is wrong because the motion is inconsistent with what you're telling me. And I'll actually read the motion for you one more time. It says, with recommendation that when so amended, the bill pass and be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services Finance. So that's inconsistent with what you're telling me. Maybe we need to change the actual motion that's before the body because we don't want to be inconsistent. So it seems that the motion is actually consistent with the argument that I'm making. Maybe you could explain to me if you think this language is accurate and why it's inconsistent with your previous answers.
Representative Doubt, the presiding officer can answer a parliamentary inquiry but not engage in debate about grammar. If you have a parliamentary inquiry, let me know what it is.
Yes, the parliamentary inquiry is this the proper language for this motion? Is the language correct?
Representative Doubt, it is the custom and usage of the House to use that language. That is how we move bills from one committee to another. Representative Doubt.
I'm afraid then that the statement that you just made admitted that the custom and usage of this body is exactly the argument that I made. And I think that your arguments are inconsistent, and I'd ask you to consider that before you're answering parliamentary inquiry questions.
Point of order. Madam Speaker, point of order.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm raising a point of order under Mason's Section 250, Purpose of Parliamentary Inquiry. And it says in Mason's under that section, under Part 2, that it is not the presiding officer's duty to answer general questions concerning parliamentary law. It also says later on that a point of parliamentary inquiry is out of order if it is dilatory. So I would ask the Speaker to rule that my point of order is well taken.
Representative Liebling, I will defer ruling on the point of order that you have raised, and I will go to the next member seeking recognition on the topic of adoption of the Conference Committee report for House File 950. The member from Carver.
Madam Speaker, I'd move for a call of the House.
Representative Pugh.
Madam Speaker, I'd move for a call of the House.
Representative Doubt moves for a call of the House. Are there 10 hands? Seeing 10 hands, there will be a call of the House. The clerk will take the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Representative Murphy.
Madam Speaker, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with, that the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
Representative Murphy moves that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The clerk will close the roll and the Sergeant at Arms will bring in the absent members.
Madam Speaker.
Representative Murphy.
Point of can you instruct the body on which on what order of business are we on right now?
Representative Murphy, we are on adoption of the committee report on House File 950, and Representative Pugh has been recognized should she wish to speak on the topic.
Point of order, Madam
Representative Drazkowski.
Madam Speaker, I believe I had the floor before the flurry of incidental motions came forward, Madam Speaker.
Representative Drazkowski, you lost your privileges of the floor when the incidental motions were made, but out of courtesy, I will recognize you before recognizing Representative Pugh if you'd like to be recognized on the adoption of the committee report. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe that a person has the floor and incidental motions take precedence over the motion before us, which is adoption of the committee report. After those incidental motions are disposed of, Madam Speaker, I believe that the person with the floor on the main motion before us, which is adoption of this committee report, retains the floor. I appreciate that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I continue to talk about the discussion of the committee report, it still has not been resolved to me exactly why and how, why we don't have the ability to talk about. And Madam Speaker, I would ask for a point of parliamentary inquiry from you, Madam Speaker, but I still have not seen description of where it is that we cannot talk about the nature, the content, the process, the amendments, and the other elements of the bill about which we are bringing forward a motion, Madam Speaker. So my question to you in the point of order to begin with, Madam Speaker, is the motion before us debatable?
Representative Drazkowski, it is. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, the motion before us is debatable, so that allows us to go into debate about whether or not to adopt this committee report for a bill, which is House File 950. And Madam Speaker, if I could continue my point of parliamentary inquiry to you, how is it, or how would you recommend that a member talk about this committee report that is specifically about a bill, a series of actions around that bill that happened during a committee and that arose and were directly related to the content of the bill, the content of the amendments, and the people of Minnesota which the bill affects? How can we divorce our debate about the motion, which you told us is debatable? How can we divorce that debate about the motion from the very subject of the motion?
Representative Drazkowski, that's not a parliamentary inquiry.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Representative Murphy, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
I rise to a point of parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We've been on the floor for an hour now, Madam Speaker, and what action before us is the committee report. And when we look at Rule 6.30, it is clear the action before us is the committee report itself. So my question for you, Madam Speaker, is House File 950 before the body?
Representative Murphy, it is not. I believe Representative Doubt wants to address the topic of the processing committee, which would be permissible under this order of business. Representative Murphy.
Madam Speaker, if the bill is not before us, and instead it is just the report of the committee, Madam Speaker, and I just am referring to Rule 6.30 and its requirements, Madam Speaker, before I ask my next question on parliamentary inquiry, 6.30 on committee reports, the House must adopt or reject a committee report, the report, without amendment. It specifies what the chair of the standing committee must report to the House, a form, the action taken by the committee, and the date, and it must be authenticated by the chair. The report is what happened in the committee. And the report, Madam Speaker, if I understand...
Madam Speaker, what order of business are we on? Is this a point of parliamentary inquiry? Because I think you asked me not to do this when I was making a point of parliamentary inquiry. Is she actually arguing the case, or is she asking you a question?
I believe she's asking a question, Representative Dowd, if you let her finish.
Point of parliamentary inquiry. So the report, Madam Speaker, before the body is about the action of the committee, but not at the bill itself. Is that correct, Madam Speaker?
That's correct, Representative Murphy.
Madam Speaker.
Representative Dowd has the floor for the purpose of debating the adoption of the committee report. Do you have a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order? Representative Murphy.
I will cease my parliamentary inquiry, Madam Speaker, at this point, and I hope that we're able to move on to the adoption of the report.
Representative Drzeskowski, to adoption of the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker and members, I still am not clear on how we can debate a committee report that is about a bill and a process that happened in committee, which included a series of amendments, some of which we didn't even have the amendment in front of us when the majority passed it by us on committee. I still struggle to understand how we can debate a committee report about House File 950 without talking about House File 950, the amendments, or the process, Madam Speaker, that happened. So, Madam Speaker, I'll try my best. I guess at this point, the only discussion I've heard is Representative Khan talking about custom and usage, and I didn't really completely understand that, but and I don't know how many times she has seen this type of debate on a committee report or adoption, but I still haven't seen anything that clarifies it. So I will give it my best foot forward, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate your indulgence. Madam Speaker and members, we debated in the Government Operations Committee yesterday House File 950. House File 950 is a bill that affects unionization of private businesses, child care providers, and PCAs throughout the state of Minnesota. As we debated that bill, we had discussion questions, many of them which were unanswered as we went through the committee process. We still don't know today, members, the discussion, we still don't know the answer about data and the lists that are shared with these unions in order for them to go out and unionize these private daycare businesses and these private PCA businesses in Minnesota. We don't know about the privacy of that data. There was not conclusive discussion brought forward. There was not a conclusive answer brought forward in committee. So that goes back to Representative Holberg's statement about this bill very likely needs to end up in the Civil Law Committee. And Madam Speaker, I don't know if it's on the path to do that or not. So I would hope that after we vote on this motion to adopt or not adopt, that we can bring some clarity to that at some time in the future. But members, there's certainly discussion about the lists that we did not have enough time to continue our inquiry into the discussion about the data in the lists and how it affects private individuals, private daycare providers, private PCAs throughout the state of Minnesota. We haven't even dug into the support services section of the bill, members. The PCA section of the bill, there was not time allocated in committee for us to do that. The bulk of the discussion, 80 or 90% of the discussion, focused on, members, the forced unionization of daycare provider businesses in Minnesota. So we didn't have a chance to really discuss that bill. And members, there were a bunch of common sense amendments that were brought forward through this discussion. the bill itself, and Madam Speaker, I'm sure you'll call me out of order if I head in the wrong direction here, but and I hope you'll do that. But the bill itself, members, calls for changing the threshold that it takes in order for a union to obtain the lists to do a certification election. We had an amendment in committee to put that, to make it consistent with the rest of PELRA, and all we heard from the author or the advocates of the bill is, please vote no, this is not an amendment that we will take. We also had a discussion realizing they were going to drop that threshold from 30% to 10%. We had discussion about if you're going to drop it to 10% for certification, we had an amendment to say, well, let's put it at 10% for decertification as well. Decertification of the elections. So at least if we're going to change it and create this one exception, as we understood it in PELRA, for this huge bill, that at least those private daycare businesses and private PCA businesses, if they wanted to decertify an election, would have the same opportunity at a 10% threshold. And members, that was failed the same way. And we talked about the A43 amendment that we didn't even get in committee before we had a discussion. The amendment was adopted before the members even had a copy of the very complex 2.5-page amendment that was before us, members. Members, this bill needs to go back to committee for us to discuss it further. The people of Minnesota were not represented in the ability for us to dig into this bill thoroughly, to vet it thoroughly, to answer the questions about data and other questions that we have. Members, I encourage you to reject the adoption of this committee report.
The member from Carver, Representative Pugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to add my voice to strongly reject this committee report, House File 950, and spend a moment about really behind the why. There's so many reasons to do this. First of all, to Representative Sanders' point and my colleague Representative O'Driscoll, this has become a super bill. It was two major bills, the unionization of personal care attendants and the unionization of in-home child care providers, all combined into one. And there most certainly was not enough time, not enough time at all. And to Representative Holberg's concerns with regard to privacy, Representative Pepin in our committee yesterday brought forth one of those common sense amendments that Representative Drazkowski spoke to about, you know, how important this is, this privacy matter, needing to be careful that in order to protect young people, you know, the 13 and 14-year-olds that are going to be unionized here, we need to be careful, we need to pay attention. And of course then she expressed shock, and I agree, how shocked parents are going to be to find out about this unionization of their kids. And Representative O'Driscoll made a point that I really think is so important, that never before, to his recollection, have data practices matters bills been so, they've always been bipartisan. And that every single one of the amendments yesterday was rammed through in a very partisan way.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Hertaus.
Could you preside over this House and give the respect to the representative from Carver County? None of this House is even paying attention. Thank you.
Members, if you could take your conversations off the House floor into the retiring room. Representative Pugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hertaus. I appreciate that. I also wanted to make a point to one of the points that Representative Winkler made earlier about there having been absolutely plenty of time. I'm concerned not only in this particular hearing but in other hearings that testifiers have been challenged, that their prepared remarks, you know, many of whom have stayed up overnight. I mean, I've spoken to these people who have come to the Capitol for the first time to testify, and they're absolutely shocked that this is how we pass laws here. And and I've been really disturbed about, the fact of the matter is, if in fact what we are discussing, what they are discussing, is not within the jurisdiction or the purview of the committee, somebody needs to tell our constituents where they need to limit their comments, because they come here with prepared remarks, and the very least we can do is allow them time, uninterrupted time to speak. And so many times we've cut these individuals off, and we have told them, can you please keep your remarks short? Can you please state things that are pertinent to the committee? And it's just so disturbing. I can see how shaken they are, and I'm shaken for them. As a first-term member, to say that I'm disturbed by all of this is an understatement. Our constituents are crying out to us. In fact, this particular matter, I have engaged with those who have reached out to me, either over the phone or, and I know that my Democrat colleagues who are on this committee have also received these same emails, but I have reached out to them, and members, our constituency is so crying out for us to listen to them. So I would just finish up my remarks by saying that this bill needs to be brought back to government operations, and I will look forward to also supporting a motion to bring it back to civil law. And we need to do this right. This is a huge overreach, and our constituencies are so alarmed by this. Thank you.
Representative Erickson.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to a question of privilege of the House.
State your question.
It's Masons 225, in case you want to check. Mr. Speaker and members, is not what is going on in committee a violation of the Constitution? Article 4, Section 8, our oath of office, in which we pledge to discharge our duties faithfully when we take our oath, and that's to listen to our constituencies and provide for due time for them to express themselves.
You stated your privilege of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have another question of the House, too, and that would be this. Has it not been true that there have been bills that have been brought to the floor through a standing committee that have been returned to committee?
Is that on a parliamentary inquiry? Yes, there have been on the motion on a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this is a motion, and this is similar to what can occur because when objection was raised in the last biennium by the majority, who then was the minority, about a bill that came to this floor by way of standing committee, an education bill, a motion was made by Representative Myra to return that bill to the Education Policy Committee after we heard complaints from the minority party then. So this precedent has been set. So whether we're talking about the Constitution and fulfilling our oath of office, or we're talking about Masons, or we're talking about our rules, or we're talking about precedent that's been set, there have been bills that have been on the standing committee report that have been returned to committee and have been done so in a gracious way. So, Mr. Speaker and members, I think my question of privilege of the House should be entertained immediately.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. It has been a long debate, but there was a reason that we brought this here. It wasn't just to play some type of games, but I'm afraid, members, that that's what it's been in committee. And we have a legitimate objection to the way committee was handled. And you've heard a couple other members, I mentioned it before. I have never been cut off in the middle of a line of questioning in committee before. A legitimate line of questioning. I didn't get the tip of the iceberg of the questions that I wanted asked, nor did a majority of the members get to ask a question of the questions that they want to ask. This is a hugely controversial bill. We're talking about a bill that's requiring small business owners to unionize. We're talking about a bill that could potentially require children under the age of 18 to join a union. Members, I looked. I've gotten 27 emails just from my constituents, many, many more from many of your constituents. 2 of those emails were from people who supported this bill. It wasn't clear if they were providers or not. The rest of
Representative Pepin, we're on the committee, the issues that happened in committee last night.
Mr. Speaker, I am talking about the issues in committee last night. Mr. Speaker, I did not get a chance in committee to do the work of the committee because I was cut off from asking questions. So I would like to be able to explain why this is important since I didn't get the opportunity in committee last night. So, Mr. Speaker and members, I had 25 people who were adamantly opposed. There are only 75 licensed providers in my district. I've gotten many more from yours. We had legitimate concerns. The majority leader said, and brought up a point earlier, that I took issue with. She said the minority moved to table the bill, we moved to recess, and we moved to adjourn. And that is true. But what the majority leader didn't say, maybe because she wasn't there, but what she didn't say is that I and another member asked to have more time. I specifically said the vote was coming up, and instead of asking the question I was going to ask, I said, I have many more questions. Other members have questions. We have tonight. We have nothing scheduled for Wednesday night. We have a room reserved for Thursday night with nothing on the docket, and we only have 2 bills for Wednesday morning. We would have had plenty of time. I specifically requested that we have more time to ask questions and debate. Another member was actually told, when she was commenting on the bill after the amendments were put on, she was reprimanded because she didn't have a question. And I don't know of a rule in Mason's or in the House rules or in custom and usage that says that the only way you can speak in committee is if you have an actual question. She was actually reprimanded for not asking a question in committee. We should have the ability to represent our constituents and ask questions, because I, for one, have 25 people that are personally affected, and it is my job as a legislator to be able to ask those questions and stand up on behalf of my constituents. We have talked a lot about transparency, and that was the goal of the majority. And I think it was a good goal, but I think we've really fallen off course. I understand, and I hope the people at home understand, that the Democrats control the governor's office, they control the House, and they control the Senate. But the rules of the House were designed and meant to protect the minority, because we too have a job, and our job is to represent the people of our districts. And when we're not allowed to do that committee work on the floor, which is what we were told earlier, that we needed to get our work done in committee, and we're not allowed to do that work in committee, when then do we have the opportunity? Representative Winkler said we have the opportunity to ask questions anytime we want. But that's not the case, because each side was told they had 20 minutes. So if I wanted to ask questions, it was taking away from that 20 minutes that they had. And once the committee was over, I would have had to chase these folks down to ask them questions. We had legitimate questions. We were prevented from asking those questions. And the folks that were opposed to this were, I would say, on the verge of being intimidated into going on with their testimony. To a person, they were told, you need to wrap up your testimony. We have a lot of other people. We need to hurry up. You need to get your point out. To the point where some people were stumbling because they were intimidated by a member of the House of Representatives. Because whether we like it or not, people at home view this as a respectable and highly important organization, and I've always been proud to be a member. And we should all hold ourselves to a high standard. But people get nervous when they come from home to testify, and when they get told that they need to wrap up their testimony, and then they see that the other side, when they testify, not one member that was supportive of this bill was told, you need to wrap up, you need to hurry up, we've got to get going, we're taking to a vote. That wasn't right. Members, all we're asking, I mean, we've spent almost an hour and a half because we weren't allowed to do the work in committee. All we ask is that when we have committees, that we are allowed to ask our questions. Representative Winkler, you pointed out something that happened last session in Civil Law Committee. I don't believe we should look to the past and see how things were done in the past, because we're a new legislature and we need to do what we need to do. But I will say that when I chaired the committee, that at least one bill had 3 days on photo ID. 3 days. This was an hour and 45 minutes, but it had 2 major bills that were married together. So when you look at all of this, all we're really wanting to do is to make sure that when we're in committee, if our job is truly to do the work in committee, we just ask that we are able to ask our questions. I tried very hard, and I know many members work very hard. Representative Nelson is actually very good at letting the minority ask questions, and I will compliment him. For the most part, he has been very understanding in letting us ask our questions. I always tried to strive to do that too. Let the minority ask as many questions as they wanted because they were in the minority. And, you know, at the end of the day, we understand that you have the votes. You control everything. You control the House. You control the Senate. You control the governor's office. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I still have a responsibility to my constituents. I took the oath. I told them that I would speak on their behalf, that I would take their issues of concern, and I would never, ever be a rubber stamp. And frankly, this is turning into a real rubber stamp legislature. We can do better than this, members. I am proud to be a member of this body, and I serve with 133 really talented, qualified, smart people who are highly respected in their districts. So let's make them proud of this institution, act like grown-ups, do the work in the committee. Members, I'm just asking that we have a little bit more time in government operations, and then we send it on to civil law, where we can deal with data privacy issues, and we follow the correct course. We don't play games with it. We just do the work of the people, and we let everybody talk and represent their constituents. With that, I'll sit down, and I will just ask that we send this back to GovOps.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, sorry. Would the Majority Leader yield for a question?
She will yield. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the Majority Leader, I want to make sure I don't have members rising up and raising points of parliamentary inquiry while I'm speaking. I want to make sure that with regards to the adoption of the committee report on House File 950, that I am allowed to discuss the manner in which that committee behaved and conducted itself.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Garofalo. I believe it is the committee report that is before the body.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Murphy yield to another question?
She will. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the Majority Leader. So I'm looking at the committee report here, House File 950. This is the proceedings under which this was conducted. I'm allowed to discuss the proceedings under which that committee report was adopted.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Garofalo. I believe it is the committee report that is before us.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the Representative Murphy would yield to another question.
She will yield. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Murphy, so the committee report that would potentially require the unionization of children taking care of their adults, taking care of their parents, is that something that I'm allowed to talk about?
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Garofalo. We can take action on the committee report under our rules. We can accept it. We can reject it without amendment. We are not to debate the content of the bill because the bill is not before the House.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Murphy yield for another question?
She will. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Murphy, so this bill right here that I'm holding that's before the body, I am allowed to discuss the manner in which the committee adopted the contents of this committee report that we're voting on. Am I correct in saying that?
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Garofalo. Before us is the committee report and not the bill.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And I think I've got the members. This is the committee report, and allow me the opportunity to translate for you what is happening today. I understand that there is a diversity of opinion about what the meaning of the vote is that that's taking place today. I understand that some members are of one opinion on whether the content is being debated or not, and others are saying it's not being debated. I'm also aware that there are members of the majority party who are opposed to the content of this bill. And my comments are directed at those members who the underlying subject matter they're opposed to today. Mr. Speaker and members, to those members, you are getting played. You are getting played. You are being told that you are not voting on the content of this bill. Later on in this session, when the bill and its content are formally before you in another manner, you will be told that you have already voted in favor of this bill and that there's simply no reason to vote against it because, after all, the minority party is going to tell everyone that you voted for it anyways. Mr. Speaker and members, you're getting played. The motion before you is on the adoption of this committee report, a committee report which forces children to be unionized, a committee report which will reduce the quality of care by diminishing care providers in the Child Care Assistance Program, and finally, a bill which will force independent business owners into a union beyond their choosing. That is what you're voting on today. You're getting played. Please vote no.
Representative Doubt. Seeing no further discussion, on the adoption of the committee report on House File 950, the clerk will take the roll. Clerk will close the roll. On the adoption of the report, Swatsky votes aye. There being 66 ayes and 61 nays, the report is adopted. Second reading of House Files. Okay. Thank you then. Oh, I'm sorry. Second reading.
Second reading, House File 19.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 152.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 300.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 650.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 695.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 748.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 790.
Second reading.
House File 828.
Second reading.
House File 853.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 972.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1117.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1136.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1179.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1181.
Second reading.
House File 1182.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1205.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1304.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1378.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1451.
Second reading.
House File 1470.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 1510.
Second reading. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading of Senate File 359.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House File 1627 through 1649.
First reading, House File 1627 to 1649. Motions and resolutions. Copies of the non-controversial motions and resolutions are online and at the desk. If there's no objection, those motions will be adopted, approved. Seeing no objection, those motions prevail.
Scott moves that House File 1470, now in the General Register, be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 1470 has to do with child support and the decision of the Department of Health and Human Services and the County Attorney's Office not to pursue child support if they are not having any luck finding the person that owes the child support. And all child support issues traditionally have gone to the Committee on Health and Human Services, so I would just ask that it would be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services policy. I'd encourage a yes vote.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Scott, since the motion is to refer this to my committee, I thought I should respond. And as I read the bill, this does not belong in the Health and Human Services Policy Committee. We have not heard any child support bills this year. If anything, it would go to Representative Mullery's committee, but certainly it would not come to mine.
Seeing no further Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to have a roll call on this. Child support bills traditionally have always gone to Health and Human Services because a lot of those people are on public assistance. Thank you.
15 hands, there will be a roll call. The clerk will take the roll. Clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 68 nays, the motion does not prevail.
Abler moves that House File 1238 be returned to its author.
Representative Abler.
Mr. Speaker, we created some clone bills of a department bill to make it go through the system faster. This was unneeded, as is the next one. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Abler moves that House File 1447 be returned to its author.
Representative Abler.
Mr. Speaker, ditto.
Seeing no further discussion, I like that kind of debate. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Myra moves that House File 1606 be returned to its author.
Representative Myra.
Mr. Speaker, that's my motion. Mr. Speaker and members, I would like to work with stakeholders to improve the bill, particularly issues of data practice and HHS policy, and we've run out of time this session to do it. Please support my motion.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Simon moves that House File 894 be recalled from the Committee on Taxes and re-referred to the Committee on State Government Finance and Veterans Affairs.
Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is the Omnibus Elections Bill. It was just heard last night, and it was supposed to go to State Government Finance. I assume it's just a clerical error that it was accidentally sent to taxes. It has nothing to do with taxes. It should be in State Government Finance. Ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Scott moves that House File 950 be recalled from the Committee on Health and Human Services Finance and re-referred to the Committee on Civil Law. Is that where it is?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, as we've already heard and Representative Holberg alluded to, House File 950, now that it is a merged bill, we have not heard one of the bills of the two bills that came together under 950, and they do have to do with data lists, and so I would request that this bill be re-referred to the Committee on Civil Law so that we can hear those issues.
Mr. Speaker,
and I'd
I
like to have a roll call, please.
Roll call being requested. There's 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I do oppose Representative Scott's motion. I understand Representative Scott's reasons for this, but the language that she wants the Civil Law Committee to hear is Article 1, Section 3, Subdivision 4. And the language reads nearly word for word the language that we already heard in Article 2, Section 11, subdivision 11 of section 2. So we've heard the language already. I understand it applies to 2 different professions, but the language is the same. And according to Rule 4.16, it states already that the Committee on Civil Law has jurisdiction over a House or Senate bill that substantially affects either Minnesota Statutes Chapter 13 or other government data. So a liberal reading of the rule would probably allot for the jurisdiction of civil law to hear it, but as members know, I try to run my committee with a conservative hand. So I don't think that our committee needs to see it, and I'd ask members for a vote of no.
Representative Holberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, maybe if we had House File 844 in front of us that actually did come to civil law, maybe you could make that point that the language that was similar and amended to shouldn't have to come back. But the reality is 950 never came to civil law. The base bill never came. And in the area of data practices, something that's similar can have vastly different consequences. And in following the rules of the House, I think that it's important we're going to set precedent today. And if it was the exact same data set or involved the same occupation, maybe. But the fact that the base bill never went to civil law and that we're talking about a different occupation with different standards and groups, I really think that this bill needs to go to civil law. If it's a matter of timing as far as deadline, certainly we have an opportunity to send it through rules. If it doesn't meet deadline, I won't be surprised if civil law is meeting again on Friday. It seems there's always 1 or 2 that come in at the last minute, but 950 did not go to civil law.
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Holberg, thank you for that. Under the rule, though, under 4.16, it is not even the bill itself that needs to go before the Committee on Civil Law. It says the re-referral requirement of this rule does not apply to a bill if the Committee on Civil Law has already approved the bill or the substance of the matter that otherwise would require re-referral under this rule. And the exact same language I would submit, Representative Holberg, does in fact constitute the substance of the matter. Therefore, I ask members for a red vote.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Lesh, the problem is the child care, daycare, in-home daycare workers, the licensed folks, that list is public data. But the folks that are non-licensed, that is non-public data. Those folks are going to be subjected to a whole new set of rules according to Chapter 13, and we did not cover that. So the language would be different. We did not cover that with House File 844. I would encourage a vote to re-refer this. It really needs to come to our Committee on Civil Law. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Clerk can close the roll. Oh, members were under call. No. We just need to lift the call. We need to do that.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Murphy.
I move that the call of the House be lifted.
No.
No.
Those not voting be excused.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that those not voting be excused from voting.
Representative Murphy moved that those not voting be excused from voting. All in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 ayes and 66 nays, the motion does not prevail. Announcements. Representative Johnson.
Greater Mankato is at the Capitol today. Representatives from Mankato area businesses and organizations will be visiting with legislators and staff this afternoon on a range of issues of concern to our community and region. You will learn how Greater Mankato has achieved the fastest growing economy in Minnesota. Please join us for an evening celebration at the Doubletree Hotel, downtown St. Paul. Catch a ride on a bus at the front of the Capitol every 15 minutes from 6:15 to 7:15, or from the Crown Plaza to the Doubletree at 7. You may return to the Capitol by bus from the hotel at 8 or 8:30. Here's a warm welcome to all my neighbors from the Greater Mankato area joining us here today. Thank you.
Representative Pulowski.
Mr. Speaker, members, due to the protracted floor debate, higher education, finance, and policy is canceled, and to make up for it, we will be adding days after the break.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3 p.m. Thursday, March 21st, 2013.
Representative Murphy moves that when the House adjourn today, it adjourn until 3 p.m. Thursday, March 21st, 2013. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion doesn't prevail. Representative Murphy.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until Thursday, March 21st, 2013 at 3 p.m.